guys, it's Miss Alexander again, and I am back. We are on the last chapters of The Wild Robot. I can't believe it. I hope you've had fun listening to every chapter and following along Roz's adventures. Today we're going to start on chapter 75, The Last Rifle. With the target deactivated, Rico 1 calmly moved on to the next phase of his mission. He limped through the gravesite and began collecting every single robot part. He splashed into the shallows and returned with a foot. He shook the sand from a cracked torso. He pulled a head out from a tide pool. Each part was then piled around Roz's lifeless body. Brightbill watched in horror as his mother slowly disappeared under the pile of parts. Roz looked just like the dead robots. But she wasn't dead. She had simply been shut down. "Don't do it, Brightbill," the flock tried to stop their leader. "It's too dangerous." But the goose was determined to bring his poor mother back to life. Brightbill crouched low to the ground and slowly moved toward the pile of robots. And when Rico 1 limped away to collect another part, Brightbill sprinted over the rocks, pushed past arms and legs, and squeaked into the pile. Click. A muffled voice echoed across the shore. "Hello, I am Rosalind Munit 7134, but you may call me Roz." Brightbill hugged his mother's face as her computer brain rebooted. "Mama, wake up!" "What happened?" she said finally. "Where is the Rico?" "He's coming this way." "What were you thinking, Brightbill? You must leave now before he kills us both." "I was scared, Mama," cried the goose. "I didn't know what to do." Heavy footsteps stomped toward them. Robot parts were knocked aside, and the Rico 1 looked down with his glowing eyes. Brightbill tried to squirm away, but thick fingers locked around him like a cage. "Mama, help!" cried Brightbill as he pulled up from the pile. "Please do not hurt my son," begged Roz. "He is harmless." Rico paid no attention to Roz. He just held up the goose in his one hand, ready to crush the life out of him. Mist swirled in the breeze. Waves sloshed against the rocks. Seagulls circled above. No, not just seagulls. Vultures. And one of them clutched something silver in his talons. The vultures spiraled down, and Rico 3's rifle clattered onto the shore. Geese and otters quickly surrounded the rifle. They squawked and squeaked and fumbled with the weapon, trying to aim the clunky thing. This hunter was confused. How had those animals gotten a rifle? And could they possibly know how to fire it? They did know. The geese had seen a trigger pressed before. A beam of light briefly flashed through the gloom, and at first it seemed as if nothing had happened. But a moment later, Rico 1's chest began glowing a brilliant orange, and then it was melting and oozing down his front, and soon there was a wide, gaping hole in the middle of his torso. His hand suddenly unclenched, and Brightbill fluttered away. Seawater sprayed over the gravesite, and steam hissed up from the Rico's scorching hot guts. He shook and twitched and collapsed beside Roz. There he is. Rico 1 turned his face to Roz and spoke in a quiet, garbled voice. "More Ricos will come for you, and if you destroy them, still more will come. The makers will not rest until all missing robots have been retrieved." When will they come?" said Roz. "How long do we have?" "You can still be fixed, Roz. Go to the airship. Bring all the robot parts with you. The ship knows what to do." His voice went silent. His eyes went dark. Rico 1 was dead. Chapter 76, The Broken Robot. Geese and otters were bustling all around Roz. They were pulling arms and legs out from the robot pile and pressing against her body. They were hoping to hear a thwoop sound as the robot limbs would snap right into place, and Roz would return to her old self, and life on the island would go back to normal. But nothing happened. No matter what they did, the limbs wouldn't attach. Our robot's body was too badly damaged. "I'm sorry, Ma," said Brightbill, his voice trembling. "I thought this would work." "It's okay, son," said Roz calmly. "I am lucky I can still think and speak." The animals tried to smile at their poor friend, but they couldn't hide their sadness. Roz was a mangled wreck, and there was nothing they could do to fix her. The robot wanted to be strong for her son and her friends. She wanted to ease their worried minds and tell them everything would be fine. But Roz knew that everything would not be fine. She looked down at her broken body, then she looked up at the geese and the otters and said, I will need some help getting home. Got her. Chapter 77, The Meeting. Strong, nimble creatures carried Roz up the sea cliffs and across the island. They carefully propped her up inside the nest. They built a fire, and then they left the robot with her son. Roz and Brightbill sat there staring at the flames until the goose finally said, Do you need anything? Could really use some new arms and legs, the robot chuckled at her own bad joke. That isn't funny, cried the goose. My mother is broken, and I don't know what to do about it. I'm sorry for joking, Roz adjusted her voice to a more serious tone. I know you want to fix me, but there is nothing anyone here can do. And at these words, her son looked away. Brightbill, I'm afraid we have a difficult decision to make. I think you should arrange a meeting of our closest friends. We could use their advice. The goose disappeared out the door, and soon Roz's oldest and wisest friends were on their way. Loudwing was the first to arrive. She limped into the lodge on her injured foot and sat close to her robot friend. Mr. Beaver appeared next, followed by Fink and Sweeper. Then Tawny curled up on the floor. Mother Bear was too badly hurt to make the journey, so Nettle came in her place. She sat in the garden with her enormous head jutting in through the doorway. Brightbill returned with Chit Chat, who was nursing her burned tail. The last one to crawl in was Crag, the old turtle. Once everyone was there, the meeting began. The group talked all the way through the night. They discussed the Ricos. They discussed what to do about Roz. They discussed how to keep the island safe. They were stark differences of opinion, and tempers flared, but by daybreak the group had agreed to a plan of action. That morning the dawn truce didn't take place in the great meadow. Instead it took place in a small meadow by the foot of the mountain, in front of the airship. Weary animals quietly hobbled into the clearing. The only sounds came from the gurgling brook that wound through the gathering and right past our robot. Roz sat in the wet grass. She was leaning against a rock. She looked so sad and frail. However, she still had her thoughts and her words, and for the moment that was all she needed. Good morning, animals of the island, Roz's voice filled the meadow. I must look strange to you, all beaten up like this. But I hope I can still sound like your old friend. Hundreds of heads nodded. You fought bravely yesterday. You risked your lives defending me, and I am eternally grateful. But many of our friends were wounded. Some may not recover. And there is worse news. Before the last Rico died, he told me that more of his kind will come to our island. They might already be on the move. And even if we defeat them, there's still more to come. My makers will not rest until all of their property has been retrieved. They want the dead robots. They want the broken parts. And they want me. The crowd was silent. But I care about this island far too much to put any more lives in danger. And so, my friends, I must leave. Voices cried out, Don't go, Roz. Next time we'll be prepared. We risk our lives so you could stay. I hear you, the robot's voice cut through the din. But look at me. My body is ruined. And the Rico said the only ones who can help me are my makers. What if he lied? Howled a voice. You can't trust those monsters. You are right, said Roz. He might have been lying. There may be no hope for me, but there is a chance I have to take. Animals, you taught me to be wild. I want to be wild again. And so I must try to get the repairs I need. If it is good for me and the island, then I return to my makers. A calm settled over the crowd. They knew Roz was right. Chapter 78, The Farewell. Our robot had an army of animals at her command, and she asked them to bring every robot part and rifle back to the airship. Absolutely everything had to go. It was the only way to be sure that Rico's would never come back. The island animals had no trouble locating the remains of the dead robots. Retrieving those remains took a bit more effort, but they were up to the challenge. Teams of clever creatures returned with robot parts of different shapes and sizes. Smashed heads and broken rifles and twisted tubes and heavy bodies were all loaded into the ship until the entire island had been cleared. Even the tiniest scraps were collected. It's amazing what an army of animals can do. A light mist was falling when they finally heaved Roz through the ship's doorway. Her head slowly turned around to face the crowd of geese and beavers and owls and insects and foxes and raccoons and vultures and moose and bear and possums and fish and deer and otters and turtles and woodpeckers and squirrels and frogs and hares and on and on. Every animal on the island had come to give the robot a proper send off. Goodbye, you wild animals, Roz's voice echoed through the gray mist. The wild animals smiled, and then a few of them started to roar. Then more started to screech, and then even more started howling and chirping and grunting. Soon every creature was hollering goodbye to Roz. The chorus of wild voices grew louder and louder, shaking the robot's body, rattling the ship, booming across the island and up into the clouds. And then their voices gradually died down to silence. Brightbill fluttered up to his mother's shoulder. You understand why I must leave, said the robot. I understand, sniffed the goose. More Ricos could be headed right here, right now. I just do not I just do not know. There is so much I do not know. I think it is time I get some answers. Will I ever see you again? Asked Brightbill, wiping his eyes. You are my son, and this is my home, said Roz. I will do everything in my power to return. Brightbill hugged his mother's worn face. I love you, Mama. I love you, son. The goose fluttered back to his flock. The robot took one last look at her home, and the door hummed close. Sad. 79. The departure. The airship's engines automatically fired up. Then the ship slowly floated above the island, turned to the south, and disappeared into the clouds. Chapter 80. The Sky. Our story ends in the sky, where a robot was being whisked away from the only home she had ever known. As Roz sat in the airship, broken and alone and speeding toward a mysterious future, she looked back at her miraculous past. Reader, it must seem impossible that our robot could have changed so much. Maybe the Ricos were right. Maybe Roz really was defective, and some glitch in her programming had caused her to accidentally become a wild robot. Or maybe Roz was designed to think and learn and change. She had simply done those things better than anyone could have imagined. However it happened, Roz felt lucky to have lived such an amazing life, and every moment had been recorded in her computer brain. Even her earliest memories were perfectly clear. She could still see the sun shining through the gash in her crate. She could still hear the waves crashing against the shore. She could still smell the salt water and the pine trees. Would she ever see and hear and smell those things again? Would she ever climb a mountain or build a lodge or play with a goose? Not just a goose, a son. Brightbill had been Roz's son from the moment she picked up his egg. She had saved him from a certain death, and then he had saved her. He was the reason Roz had lived so well for so long. And if she wanted to continue living, if she wanted to be wild again, she needed to be with her family and her friends on her island. So as Roz raced through the sky, she began computing a plan. She would get the repairs she needed. She would escape from her new life. She would find her way back home. The end. I hope you enjoyed The Wild Robot. There is a book too, so you need to check it out. It's called The Wild Robot Escapes. So if you would like to continue on Roz's adventures, check out the sequel to The Wild Robot. It's called The Wild Robot Escapes. Have a great day. I enjoyed reading this book with you. Bye.